really opened his eyes up. At first, he was really skeptical, about the whole thing. He didn't believe in it. But before they even finished the movie, he became a believer in UFOs big time, just from, meeting Walton and, doing the movie. And he said they really toned down quite a bit and kind of changed it a little bit for the movie. But the whole gist of it was there, and it opened his eyes that, hey, abductions and UFOs do exist.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned that, Gary, because, his character as the local sheriff investigator in that film is the skeptic character. He comes in there and tries to debunk what was going on, try to find out what really happened to these 7 woodcutters, young guys, by the way. Travis Walton was in his early 20s at the time. And, if you talk with Travis nowadays, I've met him many times at various conferences around the country. He is just a down-to-earth guy himself, very friendly, very believable, and he has not embellished his story one iota since he initially told it, back in the middle 1970s.
Could you imagine, though, his friends, what they went through when they took off and left him? Of course, they knew something happened to him. But then from the standpoint, could you imagine, they didn't want to go back. His best friend wanted to go back. But from the aspect, they knew they were going to be probably charged with murder. So thank God that he was returned, because they probably would have sat the rest of their lives in prison.
Yes, exactly. Matter of fact, you can imagine the scenario that night when they had been working all day long, actually thinning the forest on a contract that their boss Mike had procured for them, and they're exhausted. There's 7 actual young people crammed into a double cab old truck going down the mountain highway. When they come around a corner and see this glowing glow coming from the forest, when it's like a reddish kind of glow, they're thinking maybe they're coming across a forest fire that they're going to have to hurry and get back to town to report. But they slow down to try to get a good look at what's going on, and all of a sudden, in a clearing off to their right, is this massive saucer-shaped glowing UFO hovering below the tree level, by the way, in a clearing. So it can't be more than 75, 80 feet above the ground at that point. And immediately, Mike jams on the brakes. He's the driver, and for some reason, Travis Walton is a young, ambitious, kind of strange guy, jumps out of the cab and runs towards the object.
That was a mistake.
Yeah, it was a real big mistake, but he initially told me at the time that he just had a feeling this thing was going to flit off real quickly, and he just wanted to get a closer look at the thing before it disappeared. That was his initial thinking. Of course, it doesn't move, and it's still hovering there, and he gets almost underneath the craft itself, and he's hiding behind some logs that are piled up in a slash pile in the forest clearing there, and the rest of the crew is just yelling at him, swearing at him to get back in the truck because they want to get out of there themselves. And finally he decides it's probably a good idea. He stands up and gets ready to move back to the truck when he gets hit in the chest with this blue light. There you go, a blue light again.
Blue light, yes.
And knocks him up into the air about 20 feet, and he hits the ground like a rag doll, and they think he's dead. And they witnessed, all 6 of his friends witnessed this entire event. So they take off down the road. They're just trying to preserve their own lives.
Can you imagine the terror that those guys in that truck had? They saw one of their friends they thought was killed. Then the first thing it'd be in my mind, and I'm sure it'd be in your mind, well, you're probably going to be next. They're probably going to zap that whole truck.
Exactly. You would think that they need to get the truck out of there, not only themselves, because, that would be a real easy target, a truck. So they're just careening down the mountain as quickly as possible. And finally, They get away and they don't see any glow behind them, and they decided to stop for a second just to kind of gather their wits. They almost wrecked the truck going down the mountain road, obviously. And then Mike, the driver, the friend of Travis, says, we got to go back. Of course, you imagine what the crew was saying at that point.
Hell no, why not going back?
No way are we going back. And so the funny thing in the film was, and this is supposedly what Travis says that happened as well, is that Mike said, well, anybody that doesn't want to go back with me, get out of the truck right now. You can wait right here. I'll be right back. And no one wants to get out of the truck. So they do end up going back, and they cannot even find Travis's body in the clearing where this whole event took place. Now that's where they're starting to think to themselves, oh my goodness, what are we going to tell people? What are we going to tell the sheriff? And what are they going to think of us? Well, that would be a fascinating, conundrum to be in.
Well, I know what the sheriff and all that thought. They killed him and dumped his body somewhere. Because, I mean, they did a real good search and came up with nothing.
Yes, exactly. They had the very next day, they had hundreds of search and rescue people out there, troops on horses. They had all sorts of sophisticated gear. They even had helicopters, the whole thing. And, of course, during the ensuing days, he was gone, if you don't remember, for 5 whole days. They could not find any trace of him. And during that period of time, that's when James Garner's character brings in this very famous polygraph expert to give them all lie detector tests. They all passed the lie detector test, confirming that they were not lying about the UFO zapping their friend and that they couldn't find him. The only person that had a problem with the lie detector process was the one character, Alan Dallas, who had a previous kind of minor criminal background, and he was really nervous about taking a lie detector test. So he was kind of evasive on a few of the questions, but they didn't relate to the truth of the matter about the UFO story. Now, since then, and Travis was returned on the 6th day, and they find him, laying, or at least he finds himself laying face down on the small highway outside of Heber, Arizona, in the middle of the night, and ends up staggering to a phone booth at a gas station to call his brother-in-law to come and pick him up. And, of course, the rest of the crew then after that, including Travis, was subjected to multiple other lie detector tests. They all have passed them over the years and after the fact.
Well, it also caused a lot of friendships to dissolve. Even his best friend didn't talk to him for years after that. Because, I mean, you figure the psychological thing that, transpired. I mean, to see somebody being abducted, seeing a UFO, seeing your close friend at the time, thinking he was killed. I mean, the emotional stress that everybody got. And then, let's face it, you get a group of people inside of a cab, okay, in a truck, right? They're talking, you know what they're going to be talking about. You're an attorney. They're trying to come up with some story to cover their ass before they report it. Because, let's face it, if you go out and tell the sheriff, hey, Travis, he was abducted by a UFO. He was killed. And, we saw all this stuff. The sheriff is going to look at you. Hey, what have you guys been drinking or smoking? So I'm sure, they were talking before they even got back to town, trying to cover, probably come up with a story, and they couldn't come up with one.
Yeah. No, they were thinking about that. What do they got to do? They finally decided they're just going to go for it and tell them their story, tell them the truth. And that's how it initially got out. Of course, it went around the world. That little town of Snowflake, Arizona, was inundated from press from China, Japan, all around the world. It showed up at this little town because it was such a long period of time that he was missing, and then he shows up out of the middle of nowhere with this amazing story.
Well, something happened to him. Put it that way, and I do really feel that he was abducted. And I mean, there's just no way account for him disappearing for that length of time. Again, you can fool a lie detector. You can. There's a lot of ways to do it. But if multiple people taking it and all passing it tells me that, no, they were telling the truth.
Yeah. No, the percentages must be astronomical to have 7 people tell the same story underneath a lie detector and not be caught by the lie detector at all. So that was a fascinating experience. And of course, Travis now has been talking about more and more of his recollections that happened aboard the craft while he was there. He wasn't conscious for 5 whole days, but he sure comes up with some amazing stories of seeing the small gray aliens above in the craft, as well as humanoid, almost Nordic-looking humans aboard the craft at the same time. So, fascinating thing. Matter of fact, Travis's theory nowadays is that they weren't there to do him harm with that blue light that knocked him out. It was almost like maybe an actual reaction from the craft that they couldn't control, and they supposedly abducted him aboard to save his life, is what he's thinking.
Well, that's quite possible. It could have been from their propulsion system. It zapped them. I mean, it's so many different things. But, what I'm saying, it all gets back to what happened to you guys. I'm sitting here in my mind, seriously, the whole time since you brought it up and came on the show, I'm trying to think how I could debunk, your story. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'm trying. And the only thing I can debunk is one thing, the car battery. That I'm pretty sure I can debunk that part. But I can't debunk the car being magnetized. I can't debunk what happened to you with lost time, your watch, and now, again, I'm going to stress this. The reading you're getting from your compass on the one arm or hand or wrist or whatever it is, that it shouldn't be happening. And that is what I find so intriguing right now. Now, you have your computer on, right? You got your color monitor on?
Yep, I do.
Okay. Take your wrist and go maybe a 1/4 inch away and from your monitor and just kind of run your wrist the whole length across the monitor.
Okay, I'm doing it across the laptop monitor. And I have my area of the wrist that had the triangular equilateral triangle on it about an inch away from the monitor. I don't notice any anomalies right now on the screen.
Okay. I was hoping, how about do you have the other computer on, the other monitor on? You could do the same thing? If not, it's no problem. And just sometimes if you have like a magnetic field coming off of that implant, or if there is an implant, I don't know so much about the LCD monitors. I mean, darn, I wish you had a CRT.
Oh, yes.
That, would do it if you had a CRT TV, old TV. And if it's like if you took a magnet, to the old CRT color tubes, and you put that magnet next to it, it'll actually wreck the sharpness. It'll put it out of focus, and then you have to degauss it. When color TVs first came out, they didn't have what they call a degausser in it. So you had to create a magnet coil, and you'd have to do a routine, of demagnetizing that picture tube. Then they came out with technology which had a automatic degausser in the CRT, or in it, where it would automatically degauss CRT tube. But man, I just wish you had one, because I'm saying if you had one and you